tendencies, it's quite clear, right? We understand that this is what's life affirmative, what's life affirming, and what essentially prevents us from simply enjoying being here and now. And that is also what constitutes this, what becomes conducive and what acts as the greatest obstacle. However, it may be clear at first hearing to recognize these tendencies. A degree of honesty is required, because there's no point to talk about this if we in some ways in denial when it comes to certain psychological immaturity, when it comes to this very act of recognition of what acts here as a limitation. Therefore, emotional introspection is also part and parcel of the work. And emotional introspection is very difficult, may not be even possible, if there is not enough honesty, sincerity. And you can see that there is a possibility of some kind of pact almost there. There's the possibility that they are interconnecting, if you will, factors here. In order for there to be honesty, psychological maturity is required. And in order to recognize these limitations within, the honesty is required. So this makes it less obvious. This makes it less, if you will, straightforward. So therefore, truth is the greatest currency in a sense that it needs to be cultivated. And it's also subject to the same laws of likes increases likes. Likes increases likes. When we move into the field of open inquiry, and when we wish to live from that place, then honesty is really what makes us stronger, and the lack of thereof weakens us. So each time we say something which is not true, it weakens that very. We expand ourselves. And the reverse obviously is true here. So learning to speak truth, learning to be honest with ourselves is what strengthens us in turn. The truth is one of the utmost prerequisites, because it's the very quality of awareness, Sat. Chit Ananda, the Sat stands for being. And those of you who were in Italy remember the discourses on the qualities of the self as Satyam, right? Shivam Sundaram. So Satya as truth and Satyam here is synonymous to being, therefore to be true in all circumstances is synonymous to be who we are. And everything that goes somehow deviates from that, weakens that field, of course. So before even emotional introspection can be truly practiced, the development of that quality is paramount. Therefore, truth stands at the top list of the factors that are conducive. And lack of thereof, one way or the other, is what weakens our field. Of course, truth here is not understood only and in relation to how this may be interpreted in certain, again, psychologically agreed context of what constitutes truth. And this is where it makes it not so straightforward and not so easy. So, the truth, in a sense, here, can be also misinterpreted that if I want to say what I feel and think at all times, then means I'm true to myself. And yet, if that is with disregard to the situation, requirement of the environment, where that truth may violate someone, then that truth is no longer serving as truth. So therefore this is not a straight-cut affair. So you see, this is what I meant, that it's a bit of a delicate situation here, that a bit of a catch-22. How, in order to practice truth, or to be true to our intentions, true to our resolutions, we need to be psychologically mature. And in order to be psychologically mature, that movement has to take place. So it belongs to that discourse of how to uplift oneself. And the discourse was given with reference to the Baron Münchhausen, who took himself by his mustache and pulled himself out of the mire where he was drowning with his horse, apparently saving horse in the meantime as well. He just clenched his knees around the horse's whatever and lifted himself up because he was drowning. He assessed the situation very quickly. Wait a minute, I'm landed in this mire and I'm drowning. And in a minute I'll be drowned in this nasty smelling mire. What to do about it? There's no one to help. Okay, very little time left. Grabs himself by mustache and saves not just himself, also, as all animal rights activists will be happy, he saved the horse. So you see, this is no way out. So in other words, it takes us back to that standing alone. Standing alone as consciousness. There is no uplifting factors other than what will uplift us. And no one can uplift us other than ourselves. The decisive factor is that. Grabbing whatever is available. To Baron Münchhausen, he had luscious mustache. Right? Long enough, strong enough. Whatever you can use here as that. That's what it means. Every hook and every crook. So this, if you will, and just maybe for your further interests, the most compact text on these qualities, perhaps, well known to me and also known to the scholars in the field, is Patanjali Yoga Sutras. It's the shortest scripture, or known as one of the shortest scriptures in existence. Of course, it always comes with translations and commentaries, so it adds volume. But the scripture itself, barely few pages. Short sutras, expositions. And Patanjali Yoga, or Patanjali Yoga Sutras, is studied with this yogic psychology, where very clearly, in a very uncompromising way, the nature of the thought construct has been essentially displayed for what it is. And that scripture also has a large volume on developing that, especially the part on siddhis, developing the phenomenal powers. But of course, it's not that we are here emphasizing the attention of how to develop psychic powers, but rather this also could be understood that these psychic powers here are equivalent to creating psychologically plumb, healthy container, a positive one, because the very unfolding sutras of the chapter on the siddhis speaks of three qualities: kindness, friendliness, and happiness. Kindness, friendliness, and happiness. So it's a spiritual scripture. It's a scripture which set to deliver one to precise realization of the non-self and realization of the eternal soul, Purusha, and separated from the field of activity and creation as Prakriti. It is a dualistic scripture, but it is dualistic for a purpose. It serves the purpose in the darshanas, among the 6 systems of Indian philosophy. So how come within the scripture, which deals with these universal concepts and aspects, the unfolding sutras speak of friendliness, kindness, and happiness? I'm bringing this to your attention because it is understood that these are fundamental qualities upon which any power is built, any psychological power. Because it creates, if you will, a healthy, already wholesome predisposition. And these qualities are meant to be harnessed. Therefore, sutras unfold in the chapter on the siddhis, phenomenal powers, with the aforementioned qualities. So in other words, happiness here is being factored in as a prerequisite for being able to have mastery of certain laws of nature, if you will. It's a predisposition already. It's like a project. Okay, so this was just to bring it as a suggestion for your further studies, that if we speak of psychology, psychology is not denied completely in yogic sciences. It has its own place, but it's not psychology which deals with propping up an individual. This is where, by the way, a radical difference also in terms of a lot of other aspects, because we can apply this understanding also when it comes to treating an individual. You see, the medical system today, by large, the orthodox medical practices, treats an individual. So the aim and the very, very treatments are essentially to remove anything that threatens that individual, undermines the health and the well-being. But that perspective is limited there and then, because it forgets that there is no such thing as individual per se. So of course we might have a better surgeon, a better, let's say, doctor who treats us, who will introduce something which is not necessarily part of that what is being taught at the medical academy, at the medical university. Because if, and by large, this, what is being applied there, it's a treatment of the effect. Symptoms are being treated. Because we treat the surface level of individual, forgetting that individual extends through invisible threads into the cosmos. How can you treat that? Well, then it will be a very different kind of treatment than most of the treatments that especially deals with severe chronic conditions or terminal illnesses associated with failures in immune system. And there is a parallel in the way that psychology, by large, modern Western psychology functions, because it has the aim to treat an individual again. It has this assumption and belief that it can bring the individual to a balanced state of wholeness, as long as certain individual pertinent to the individual conditioning experiences are being redressed, then given the patient undergoes, or the client, certain therapy, then it will return the state of balance back into that individual life. Well, there is a news. The state of imbalance can be a crisis which is inseparable from any growth. Crisis which essentially has no place neither in psychiatric nor in psychological treatment. Therefore, I keep repeating the same thing over and over, but I want to bring this yet one more time. People who have coined out the term spiritual emergency, Stanislav Grof and his team, including his wife, urging the professionals of these domains, both the psychologists and the psychiatrists, to reevaluate entirely the whole scope of symptomatology of what goes under certain terms as, and then being treated as disturbance in a psyche. It's been spoken out loud by Stanislav Grof and a few years ago at the conference, international conference, and only recently I have seen the seminars or the webinars offered with this brilliant scientist to whom we are essentially indebted with these uncompromising insights, that he's dedicated his entire life in studying the cases of awakening, and how can this be then interpreted first through the eyes of psychological inquiry. So, because the field of psychology and especially the field of psychiatry does not have any understanding about these transformative processes. Therefore, anything that comes under that category is pathologized already from the start and immediately treated. So it is immediately treated without even understanding what is taking place. So this is a situation we live in now. It's actually seriously critical situation. Because at the same time, awakening is not like a kind of phase. It's not because there's some spiritual methodologies were brought from the from the east to the west, and suddenly there is this. No, awakenings take place, there's this almost an explosion. Whether this is because of the demographical explosion, because it's more of us on the planet, maybe because there is this global awakening like some people speak, maybe because of the awakening of the planet's Earth's electromagnetic field. We don't know. All these are various takes on. But these spontaneous awakenings are now becoming more and more commonplace. In the book released a few years ago, it's the work of the collection of essays by about 20 to 25 spiritual teachers, psychologists, and professionals in the field under the title of Kundalini, published by Saunstorf. And the book is broken into several chapters, several parts. And one part deals with statistics. And although I was quite informed about the state of affairs, it still was staggering to me to find out 5 years ago that roughly 5% of North American population is being treated on a yearly basis, essentially treated psychiatrically against unknown symptomatology, which all falls under the terms spiritual emergency or spiritual crisis. But because there are no such entrants in the field of psychiatry, it is immediately being treated as anomaly. In other words, a breakthrough, a growth in consciousness is being treated. It's like suggesting that someone will treat with chemicals a teenager. Adolescent age is known for being not stable because the endocrine system, right, thyroid gland, seriously takes over of all functioning approximately at the set of teens, about 12 years. And then by the age of 25, the thyroid gland is in charge of all the processes, absolutely. And it is the thyroid gland that becomes the chief master of the production of the hormones in the body. So in other words, our endocrine system undergoes tremendous change. And these are the most formative years of our life as well. The most formative in the sense of that, if you will, what goes into the actualization of personality, which rapidly becomes aware of one's own self in its environment. This is what the teenage years are known for, no? Suddenly we realize with greater degree and with greater acuity this what then becomes the ideas about ourselves. So can you imagine if suddenly the adolescent age would be seen as some kind of neurotic affair. And one would need to be seriously under the intervention or interference of medical authorities who will pack the organism with suppressants. And that's what happens to people who undergo awakening, because that is yet another, if you will, growth of a different kind. And that can take place at any time, because it's no longer linked to the development of the physical organism. It can take place in a much earlier age, like it took place, let's say, with someone whom we spoke and mentioned today, like Ramana Maharshi. At the age of 16, he went through the profound awakening. Or it can happen to someone who is 65, like it happened to my own mother. So these processes are simply natural processes of giving birth yet to another reality. It's a transformation of consciousness. So this I wanted to also highlight before speaking about any tantric psychology, because otherwise, if we just plunge ourselves into the theme, into the topic, without the positioning ourselves and without the reference point of where we are collectively and in general understanding of the situation and the terms.